Jasmine moved swiftly between tables in the crowded small-town diner, balancing plates and coffee pots with practiced grace. She kept her head down, trying to ignore the whispers that followed her like a chill draft. The midday rush meant every booth was full, the clink of cutlery and low murmur of conversation filling the air. But at one corner table, a group of customers wasn't even trying to hide their laughter. Their eyes darted to Jasmine's arms, where burned scars traced jagged, angry lines along her dark skin despite the rolled-down sleeves meant to hide them. One man leaned into his friends, stage whispering, "Bet she fell into a meth lab." Another snickered, "God, look at those freak show arms." Jasmine heard every word. She felt the blood rush to her face, her throat tightening until she could barely speak. But when she arrived at their table with the check, she forced a polite smile, her voice trembling only slightly. "Here you go. Anything else I can get you?" she managed. They just sneered. One of them mockingly recoiled, pretending to be afraid to touch the receipt she handed over. "Nah, don't burn us too," he said, sending the table into fresh peals of laughter. All around them, the diner fell uncomfortably quiet. Other diners shifted in their seats. Some looked away, staring hard at their food as if they wished they could disappear. The cook watched from the pass-through window, lips pressed in a tight line. But no one said anything. Jasmine felt the tears sting her eyes. She turned quickly so they wouldn't see. Her heart pounded with humiliation and fury, but she swallowed it down like bitter medicine. She had bills to pay, rent due next week. She couldn't afford to lose this job over a confrontation, no matter how badly she wanted to scream. As she wiped down another table with shaking hands, her scars seemed to burn anew with each hateful laugh that echoed in her ears. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter. That she was stronger than this. But it was hard to believe. In that moment, standing there among the clinking silverware and uneasy silence, she felt very, very small, and very alone. A few minutes later, the door jingled open to let in the hot afternoon light, and in walked an older man with a weathered face beneath a faded Marine Corps baseball cap. Frank moved slowly but with the quiet authority of someone who'd seen too much to be easily rattled. He nodded to the hostess, took a stool at the counter, and ordered a black coffee in a low, gravelly voice. As he settled in, he couldn't help but notice the tense hush that lingered over the room. He glanced around and caught the last of the rude customers' mocking laughter as Jasmine retreated from their table. He frowned, eyes narrowing as he watched her shoulders tighten and her head dip. He sipped his coffee, the bitter warmth steadying him, but his gaze stayed on Jasmine. She was wiping down the table now, hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped the rag. Frank's jaw tightened at the sight. He'd seen that kind of shake before, on medics under fire, on kids trying not to cry at memorial services. Then she turned just slightly, unaware of his eyes on her. The motion pushed her sleeve up enough to reveal what the mocking customers hadn't bothered to notice, a faded tattoo, half obscured by the jagged, shiny scars. Frank squinted, heart giving a hard, sudden kick. He knew that insignia. It was an old army unit mark, one he'd seen in the sand and heat of Afghanistan. He'd seen it on the arms of the medics who ran toward explosions instead of away. The ones who refused to let people die on their watch. The coffee cup trembled in Frank's big, calloused hands as realization dawned. The room seemed to go quiet in his ears, the clinking dishes and murmured conversations fading out. He felt a rush of shame for the way no one had spoken up for her. He set his cup down carefully and exhaled, eyes fixed on Jasmine like he was seeing a ghost from the past. He hadn't expected to find a hero in this quiet diner, but there she was, trying to hide in plain sight, her scars and her history on display for anyone who cared enough to really look. Frank set his cup down with a sharp clack that drew startled glances from the counter. He rose slowly, shoulders squared, and turned to face the table of jeering customers. The room fell quiet, the hush thick with tension. "You think she's less because of those scars?" he demanded, voice ringing with outrage that made the silverware rattle. Those burns were earned in service. The men at the table snickered, rolling their eyes. One of them muttered, "Oh, come on, old man, mind your business." But Frank didn't budge. He took a step closer, his face hard as stone. "You mocking her for those scars is like spitting on every soldier who ever saved your sorry ass without asking your name." Their laughter faltered. The other diners watched, eyes wide, no one daring to speak. Even the cook froze behind the pass-through window, spatula in hand. Frank turned slightly, softening as he looked at Jasmine. "Miss," he said gently, voice dropping to something close to a plea, "come here a second." Jasmine hesitated. She shook her head at first, eyes brimming. But something in Frank's voice, something broken and earnest, made her take a shaky step forward. He pointed to the edge of her sleeve. "That tattoo?" he asked, his voice cracking, "is that 3rd Recon?" She swallowed hard, tears spilling over. Her voice trembled. "Army medic. Afghanistan. 3rd Recon. We got hit, saving civilians. Whole truck burned." Frank closed his eyes, a shudder rolling through him. His hand trembled as he wiped at his face. When he spoke, it was raw. "I was in that convoy," he rasped. You pulled me out of the fire. I wouldn't be standing here if you hadn't stayed behind." The diner was silent except for the low hum of the fridge. The rude customers' smirks vanished, replaced by blank, stricken stares. Jasmine's lip quivered. She tried to speak but only a sob escaped. Frank didn't care who was watching. He opened his arms and she fell into them, shaking. He held her like she was family. And in that moment, the whole diner seemed to remember what it meant to be human. The diner was hushed, the tension gone, replaced by something heavier, an almost sacred silence. Jasmine clung to Frank, her face buried in his chest as tears soaked the front of his old, worn jacket. She tried to stifle her sobs, but they broke out in trembling gasps. Frank held her steady, one big hand on her back, patting gently like a father calming a scared child. The rude customers didn't say a word at first. Their eyes were downcast, faces pale, the mocking smirks wiped clean by the truth of what they'd just heard. One of them swallowed hard, knuckles white around his coffee cup. Frank let Jasmine go just enough to look her in the eyes. He gently brushed her tears away with the side of his thumb. "You shouldn't have to serve anyone today," he said roughly. "You did enough serving for a lifetime." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash, slapping it onto the counter with finality. "Whatever she was gonna make in tips today, put it on me. And then some." The cook behind the counter blinked, stunned. A waitress at the other end started sniffling and quickly wiped her eyes on her apron. Then the applause started, quiet at first, almost hesitant, before swelling into something real. A man at a corner booth stood up and clapped slowly. A young mom at the counter nudged her kid to join in. Patrons began dropping $20 bills on the counter as they left. "For her," they said, voices husky with shame and respect. One woman pressed a folded bill into Jasmine's shaking hand and whispered, "Thank you for what you did." Even the ringleader of the mockers finally stood. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, not meeting Jasmine's eyes. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." Jasmine tried to speak but just nodded, tears still falling. She hugged Frank again, tighter this time. In that quiet diner, walls lined with old photographs and years of shared meals, something shifted. The cruelty that had poisoned the room only minutes before was replaced by the raw, uncomfortable beauty of people trying to do better. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And for Jasmine, it was enough to feel like she wasn't alone anymore. The diner was nearly empty by closing time, the last chairs flipped onto tables, the floor freshly mopped and shining in the warm glow of hanging lights. Jasmine sat at the counter, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. For the first time that day, her shoulders were relaxed. She exhaled deeply, letting the weight of everything that happened finally settle. Frank sat beside her, cradling his own cup in his rough hands. The lines in his face were softer now, the anger long gone, replaced by a tired but genuine warmth. He studied her carefully, taking in the scars that twisted across her arms but no longer seemed to weigh her down. Jasmine noticed and laughed quietly, brushing a tear from her cheek. She gave a small, real smile, one that reached her eyes. Frank smiled back, nodding with approval. "Those scars," he said in his gravelly voice, tapping the counter for emphasis. "They're proof you saved lives. Don't ever hide them." Jasmine's eyes filled again, but these were different tears. She bit her lip, voice catching as she whispered, "Thank you. I forgot that." For a moment, there was nothing but the clink of cups, the low hum of the fridge, and the silence of two people who had both seen too much but understood each other completely. Outside, the neon sign buzzed and flickered in the darkness, casting a gentle glow into the quiet street. And as they sat together, an old Marine and the young medic who once saved his life, the narrator's voice seemed to echo in the empty diner, low and certain. "Never judge someone's scars. You might not know the lives they've saved."